All right, welcome everyone to Silhouettes of the Truth. I'm your host, Dominic D'Souza. Today we're joined by Citlalin Ossio. Welcome, Citlalin. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Good to have you here. Alrighty, so Silhouettes of the Truth, it's the show about fiction for modern Catholic authors. We're talking creed, craft, and co-creation rooted in grit, grace, gods, and dragons. Please press like, subscribe to this channel. Dominic D'Souza, I'm a novel lover, all-around Catholic creative, founder of CatholicAuthor. We're here to inspire your faith and your fiction. So, Citlalin, you've got this fun line on your um, Instagram profile. You describe yourself as a Catholic writer, artist, and a hungry panda. Okay, why the panda? And then we'll get into the rest of it.
Yeah, pandas are my favorite animal, and I'm I have this thing where I'm always like hungry. Like I love food a lot, so that just became my little like inside joke with my family. And then I just brought it over to like my social media, and I was like, "This is cute. Like this is fun."
That's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your backstory? Like, as a character in a book, like you mentioned, you've got an Italian name. Um, who's Citlalin?
So I'm just a girl trying to become a saint, like most people. Um, and I just really love writing, and I really love fantasy. If my stories don't start out as fantasy, I find some way to add like magic or monsters or set them in
Nice.
fantastical worlds. So, and right now I'm focusing on short stories because novels are giving me a bit of trouble.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, they're just like I've only ever been able to finish one novel, and so short stories are not only faster to finish,
Mhm.
but I feel like they give me the freedom to explore my writing and push my boundaries and like my comfort zones.
Mm.
So I really appreciate that. And I'm still like, I've had a few short stories published, but I still consider myself like a baby writer or at least a toddler writer because I have so much to learn. And especially now that I'm trying to be like a Catholic writer, I still have a
Mhm.
lot to learn in my faith too. So yeah, that's yeah, like my last name is like Italian like heritage, but I'm actually like Mexican. Like my parents, like everyone in my family is Mexican. I'm the only one that was born here.
Okay.
So, um, but yeah, like I like to incorporate that into my stories too. So,
Well, that's
yeah.
cool. So tell us about your latest novel, which is called Misspelled Magic Gone Awry, and it's called The Legion of Dorks presents book 3. And is this a book that did you write all of these, or it's a collaboration and you were part of it?
It's a collaboration. It's started by Cursed Dragon Ship Publishing,
Mhm.
run by this awesome people, Kelly and her husband. They teamed up with these gamers on Twitch. They're called the Legion of Dorks. It's a group
Mhm.
of them, and every year they have a charity stream for uh, Toys for Tots. And so Kelly teamed up with them to um, like come up with this anthology, and all the proceeds, well, like 50% of the proceeds go towards Toys for Tots until
Oh,
they
cool.
um, reach their like until they get all the production money back, I guess. And
Mhm.
then after that, it all goes for Toys for Tots. So when she talked about it, I just loved the idea of them teaming up for something so cool.
Mhm.
And like I had already met Kelly before, so and the very first prompt was laundered an anthology of monster messes, and that sounded so fun to me. And each theme is always so fun, so I like you know submitted a story, and then every year I've submitted one, and so I'm really grateful that she likes my story, because they get a lot of submissions, so I'm really thankful for that. And this year, Misspelled Magic on Awry also
Mhm.
sounded so fun. Just the idea of magic, like going crazy. So my story is about this girl who wants to join a gang in her town because her abuela just died, and so she's kind of alone and she's trying to find family.
Hmm.
And yeah, so she has to steal something, which kind of goes against her morals, but she kind of has to grapple with that. And so she meets certain people, and then yeah, I can't really say anymore because I'll spoil. But I mean, all the stories in these anthologies are amazing. Like especially this year, it
Hmm.
was like so funny and so heartwarming. So I really recommend you guys like check that out.
How did you come up with the idea for the story? I mean, you said there was a theme. How did you then come up with your own idea, and like what was it that just sort of inspired you? Like it just gripped you and you thought, I have to tell that story, you know?
Okay. Well, I the thing that I really wanted to tell was, like I said, short stories give me the freedom to experiment.
Hmm.
And up until this short story, excuse me, I had really focused on writing characters that were like morally good, like
Mm.
they leaned more, you know, morally good.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to play around with the idea of um, not having like a morally great character, but just someone who maybe didn't make the right choice and the consequences of that.
Hmm.
So I started off with the character Catalina, and I mean not Catalina, Karina, and um, and just try to play on like her desire for a family because family is very important to me. I'm very blessed to have like a loving family, and so I she just lost her family, and so like her only family, and so she's really desires that connection, and um, I also wanted to try to make it funny. So like what happens? I mean, I don't know if it came across like this on the page, but it does. It is for me like just imagining. I'm like, well, that's kind of ironic. What happens when she steals what she like the thing she was sent to steal? So yeah.
Well, okay, I'm gonna have to get a copy of this book then. Are you a prolific writer? Do you like to write regularly, or do you just sort of do you wait until you have like the perfect idea, or do you sort of write until it perfects itself? Like, what's your process?
um, I well, when I first started like wanting to be a writer back in like high school or college, I was
Mhm.
not consistent with my writing at all. I would I was one of those that was like, "Oh, I'm gonna wait till I'm inspired." And I mean, I don't know. I feel like most authors maybe go through that stage, but
Mhm.
as I've grown and gotten more serious about writing, I eventually was like, "No, I have to write as often as I can." You know,
Mm.
I don't write every day. I just can't right now, but my goal is to write like at least like Monday through Friday. And what helps me is sitting down just for 15 minutes. Like if I don't want to write, I tell myself, okay, just put in a 15-minute timer because that's how I write in 15 minutes. And that's just to keep things consistent with like when I track my word
Mhm.
count and how long I've written. And so when the timer goes off, um, I'm already sitting in front of my story, so I'm more motivated to keep going.
Mhm.
So I'll end up writing an hour or two, when I didn't even want to write at all.
Nice.
So that's like my main. It's very important for me to just sit down and
Mhm.
write. And I'm really trying to, especially now that I'm working on short stories
Mhm.
and they're faster to finish. I really want to get, one every if I can month or 2 months because I'm a
Nice.
really slow writer. So um, yeah, I want to be the type of writer that writes as often as possible,
Mhm.
you know? So,
That's awesome. And when you sit down to write, is it always something fiction-like or story-like, or is it like a stream of consciousness or like a piece of an article? Does it matter for you what you're writing, or is it very specific?
um, I I like focusing on fiction because it's what I'm most comfortable with right now.
Mhm.
I don't really know if I would. I mean, I guess like nonfiction would be. I know I used to like write like little journals
Mhm.
like to myself, but like I don't really find that satisfaction in stuff like that right now. I mean, that could change in the future. So right now I find a lot of joy in fiction writing, and like I said, specifically with fantasy, like there's just something about like creating worlds and like exploring real world themes in fantasy. Like I get to talk about certain things without, I hope, without being preachy,
Mhm.
and like in a fun way. So yeah, fiction is definitely like my bread and butter. I would like to get into poetry because it looks so fun, but I'm bad at poetry. Like I don't know.
No, it is a different discipline.
Hmm.
I'm curious. I'll get to world building and backstory in a moment, but do you have a favorite legend or a favorite story?
Uh, yeah, I it's a bit unconventional. They're a video game series called Legend of Zelda. I don't
Oh
know
yeah,
if you've heard of it or played it.
it's been a long time. I think so.
So that was my introduction into fantasy, and I fell in love with it right away. Like I watched my brother play it when I was like 4 or 5, and like the world and the characters, the music, everything just captivated me.
Hmm.
And every game has expanded on or added to all the elements I enjoy, and
Hmm.
it's very influential to my world building. And I finally was able to pinpoint why with one of the latest games that I played, Breath of the Wild.
Hmm.
Um, the world of Hyrule feels so diverse and alive, and I really want my world to feel that way. Like I want readers to want to visit these worlds and like, want to just pick a path and knowing that they'll discover like the weirdest things or just like maybe scary things or beautiful things. I really hope that one day I can create worlds that give that sense of wonder and
Hmm.
like beauty that I find with um, Hyrule in the Legend of Zelda games. And it could be that they're visual, so it's easier to like to see that.
Hmm.
But it's going to be a little harder with fiction, like
Right.
novel and short stories. But I mean, I hope I have read a few other stories where the world building is like, wow, this is so like I can feel it.
Do
Yeah.
you when you craft your stories, or are you talking more about the novels that you've written, or do you like to write your stories within the same sort of universe, or is each one its own kind of universe?
I right now I consider a few of them in the same universe, and then a few of them like I don't really like to plan a lot in advance.
Okay.
Because I tend to be the type of person that gets really into it. So I've always been afraid that if I sit down to like create a world from scratch, I'm gonna spend like months to like years on it, and
Uh-huh.
I really want to get words down on the page instead.
Get
So
to the storytelling part. Yeah.
yeah, because world building is a lot of fun, but I like to take my time with it and like just think of like the smallest details. So
Hmm.
when I create my short stories and my novels, I'll try to add things like I try to add little things um, with each one.
Hmm.
So in the first one, I had like a girl who's part dragon, and so I'm like, okay, well maybe I can, and she wears like a little gem. So and then a few other ones, I'm like, oh, let me expand on like this little gem thing, and
Nice.
to like I just like to expand on the magic, specifically
Hmm.
like the magical elements or the items in these worlds,
Hmm.
and oh, and character creation, like
Hmm.
non-human characters. I really like non-human characters. So
Hmm. That's so
yeah.
fun. Are you familiar with the fantasy author Brandon Sanderson?
I have heard of him. I have
Okay.
yet to read his stuff because there's so much. I don't even know where to
To
begin.
begin, I know I think I've read like, I don't know, maybe four or something of him, but one of the things that I really liked about how he'll sometimes, like, his books are thick and there's so much world build. I think I remember he's got a spreadsheet, and then he's got like a world building accountant who goes through and
Oh,
vets to make sure that he hasn't missed things anyhow. So that's like up, very, very
yeah.
intense. But one thing that he will sometimes do between parts in his big novel, like part one ends, and then he'll put a couple of short stories purely to explore other little areas, or oh, here's an interesting sort of idea and it doesn't really fit the rest of my novel. Well, let's just explore it in a short story and just let it go, and you
Yeah.
sort of let that creative steam go. And after reading that, I was looking back at one of the novels that I was planning to write one day and thought, I don't ever actually want to get into the weeds of telling a whole nother story arc, but I could actually just take that as a tiny short story and just sort of drop it in and use that as ways to explore all the other things in the world.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
So that's fun. So okay, speaking of magic, because you mentioned you really enjoy playing with that, how do you handle magic to where it feels real to you in the story, and do you make it kind of unlimited, or does it have consequences, and how much thought goes into that, and so that you don't stop enjoying the creativity of it all?
Yeah. I'm still learning with uh how I want to do yeah, how I want to incorporate those magic systems because but that's why I said like some stories I consider them in the same universe and some are different,
Okay.
even though they may have like kind of similar elements, but because I don't want to limit myself with like just one world. And
Hmm.
so I I like to keep things a little grounded where I would like to have magic have some sort of consequence.
Hmm.
But when I do have a few where it's like unlimited like power or like uh elements, I guess, because I think that is a little more fun, but that's more for like my lighthearted stuff. If it's
Hmm.
more serious, like I said, I do like to keep things a little more realistic, and it's just like the effects of magic on people. Like if I ever have like healing characters, they're like they take on that suffering. Like I feel like it's a little like
Oh, that's
overpowered if they
wow.
if
Yeah.
they heal and then there's like, oh, I can heal like everyone, and not have a scratch on me, whatever. Like I like having um consequences like that. And I think that adds to like the characters' choices and how they're like do they really want to heal these people if they're going to be hurt? Like that also adds to like the conflict I think
Hmm.
internally. That I mean,
That's so interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And I
yeah. That's what makes I find what makes magic really fun, or at least the storytelling then becomes really fun, because there's yeah, you're building in those limits. Okay, so now I got to ask, when you craft a story, either a novel or a story, are you more character focused or like event focused? Like, this is a really fun idea and we'll just put a person or a character in it, or do you start with, this is a cool character, let's go places with them, or is it both?
mm, it's a bit different for each story.
Okay.
So, like the one for Misspelled, I I wanted to focus on the character and her journey, like her own internal journey.
Hmm.
For like my first short story, it was very much about the event. Like she had to go save a dragon who was hurt, and so the her character like growth or stuff like that came after like second.
Hmm.
So I would like to focus more on characters. I feel like um, focusing on people is a bit more. How should I put this? Like my favorite books have been more character focused. So
Hmm.
I want to write stuff like that. But sometimes I just really want to like have like a cool like fight scene or a cool like magic scene, like something to do with like magic.
Hmm.
So it just depends on the story and what I want to tell.
Hmm.
So yeah.
That's cool. Do you what were some novels you enjoyed reading growing up?
Growing up, my favorite um, when I was a kid, my favorite series was The Land of Elion by Patrick. I don't remember his name right now. But it's about a girl who um, is in lives in like a walled society, and so she has to go outside the walls to find out something that's going on with the world that's going to like affect her world.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like talking animals, and which I loved as like a little girl. And it was the first story that had a heroine that did not have to be saved in the traditional sense, and that was not like romance heavy. Like she was very much just trying to protect her home, which I
Mm-hmm.
really loved that. And I actually, after that, I didn't really read a lot of fantasy. I actually didn't like grow up reading like Harry Potter, or what other ones were famous. I can't remember. Like I stuck to more like contemporary stuff.
Okay.
And then when I finally got back into reading fantasy, just like last year, 2 years ago, my favorite stories were from a writer called named Rosamund Hodge. She
Okay.
wrote Cruel Beauty and Crimson Bound. And Sarah Beth Durst, she wrote the Queens of Renthia trilogy, and another like Race to Sands. I really loved Sarah Beth Durst's world building. It was so fresh and
I've not
fun.
heard of that. What was it that you enjoyed about it? Why do you say fresh? That's a great word.
Because it's about this society that only women can um, communicate with these like elemental spirits like wood, water,
Mm-hmm.
fire, and all that. And these spirits grow like they make the world function, but they're also
Mm-hmm.
bloodthirsty. They do not
Oh,
like humans at all. And so there's this struggle between like having to they have a queen. Each realm has its own queen
mm-hmm.
that is able to kind of control the spirits,
Okay.
keep them like, not so murderous. And so that concept was really cool to me. And then when I actually read it, the world, like I had never seen anything like that about like spirits who like are after blood, like after human blood, but they have to like live with them too. Like they need them to like
Mm.
work together. Um and the characters are really fun too. But the like I said, those are the worlds that that's another world that really felt alive to me too.
Okay.
And also for Rosamund Hodge, she her worlds are more like familiar to what I had seen in a few other fantasies, but
Mm-hmm.
her characters were like those are the characters I want to write. Like they're like
Nice.
broken and flawed, but they grow and you know, they heal. So that's really what I want to focus on too.
That is really cool. Um, how can people get in touch with you, Citlalin?
So I'm on Instagram at Citlalin Ossio. I don't have a website yet, but I'll get there one day. I don't really know if I have anything to contribute. So I feel like Instagram is the best way for me right now. And yeah. I'm on Twitter technically, but I kind of abandoned it.
Okay. Well, we'll drop the link to your Instagram in the show notes here. Um, uh, but you don't have a place online yet where you share stories or things that you're working on or things
No,
you're
not
proud of
yet.
yet.
That's really Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Um, if you had 1 minute to share a piece of advice to upcoming or especially new Catholic authors out there, what would you like to say to them?
Um, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to experiment with your writing and, get out of your comfort zones, try different forms. Don't be afraid to connect with other writers and share your work with them if they're trustworthy. And don't be afraid to write about like the reality of like this dark world, because like we know that there's hope and like love. So yeah, I hope that you won't be afraid, that you'll give all your fears to God. And then I get to fill my virtual bookshelf because trying to be minimalist. I get to fill my virtual bookshelf with so many amazing authors. So
Very cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming on today. It was great to chat with you, learn more about you. And we just met through Instagram after I started the account, and we just started following each other. And
Yeah.
it's fun
Thanks.
to actually have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And for those who are listening, if you're catching this on Spotify or YouTube or Anchor, if you enjoyed the episode, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your one friend that you think would really like to see it and would enjoy learning about Citlalin and what it is how she's approaching things. Catholic Author, it's a project by smart Catholics. You're invited to join the creative community for the modern Catholic author. We are helping Catholic authors grow, connect, and keep writing. Sign up today at CatholicAuthor.us. Until next time, keep writing.